Celeste is a beautiful game that features Madeline, a girl who is struggling with depression. To try and fix this and clear her mind, she makes a split decision to climb a mountain. As she makes her way up, she goes in and out of dreams, meets friends, and has to learn not to fight with herself, but to accept herself for who she is, and work with herself to achieve things greater than she could do on her own. But it is just a game, and as we all know, gamers don't touch grass. Celeste is a very challenging game, but I still decided to add a little bit of extra spice. I'm not allowing myself to touch any grass during this playthrough, and since it is a mountain, as you get higher there's less grass and more snow. So I added the extra rule of no snow. Snowy and icy ground is okay, but if it extrudes then it's a no-go. Since there's more grass the closer to the bottom you are, the tutorial is brutal. You start in a grassy field. One of the rules I set for myself is that when you respawn on grass, it's okay, as sometimes it's unavoidable. But you do immediately have to jump and dash to immediately get out of there. I also said grass and snow are okay during cutscenes as I have no control. Before I show you how I did this, I want to share an Easter egg I found. You can actually go left and find Madeline's car parked at the bottom of the mountain, which is something I've never found before. Anyway, back to the challenge. There's technically just enough space to squeeze in between these blades of grass. It took hundreds of jumps, but I eventually managed to get right in between them and then jump onto this platform. I then had to jump to this wall over here and then precisely parkour to the other side before making an even more precise jump onto this platform between the grass. I jumped to this wall, which allowed me to climb onto the block of ice, and after that, it was as simple as 2 more wall jumps and I finished the first screen of the tutorial after 20 minutes. If you like the video so far, then subscribing would mean the world to me. Thank you. Something to mention too is that you don't unlock dash until the first level. So the only things I can do right now are jump and climb, which makes it a lot harder. After the first screen, nothing was too difficult until the bridge. There are constant patches of snow that I have to parkour around while the bridge is rapidly falling behind me. Eventually, I was precise enough to get to the end and unlock dash. Now we have the first level, which has a ton of snow and grass. To avoid this, I usually had to stick to the very edge of platforms and make very tight jumps that if I was slightly off would result in death, or touching grass or snow, which also meant death. There was one very tight section with snow-covered wooden platforms. The final jump seemed to require me to dash straight into some snow, but by dropping down first and then dashing up, I managed to land on the edge of the platform. After those jumps, I was at the ending gravestone and campfire of the first level. That's the first chapter complete, and actually, the second level isn't too hard either. I got the blue heart because why not, and headed to the mirror. There were a couple of small patches of snow, but there wasn't anything too hard. A lot of this level is focused on you exploring and going to get strawberries, and because of this, it's pretty short, and I was quickly able to find the section where you have to outrun your evil alter ego. Again, there are a couple of rooms where I have to make sure not to go too far into platforms, like this room with the 4 keys, but I eventually made it to the end. Since I'm in a cutscene, her stepping on snow doesn't matter. But after calling her friend, she realized that she's dreamed all of this and nothing was real. So I played through the actual version and finished with Madeline calling her mom. The third level is again a little lacking in the snow department. There were some massive mounds in the beginning that I could just jump over, but after that I entered a hotel, and while it does have deadly antimatter, it thankfully doesn't have any grass or snow. That is until Madeline, which is such a stupid name, makes fun of Mr. Oshiro and he chases us out of his hotel. We now have some very snowy parkour and a massive deadly head chasing us. The first room only took a couple of tries and required me to land on the edge of platforms and use my dashes very well. The next room introduced the moving blobs into the mix and I had to be very careful about bopping Mr. Oshiro's head to make it through. We got to go back inside for a little segment, but were quickly thrown into the cold again. There was this cool dashing section with a ton of green crystals in a row before the hardest room I faced so far. It took more than a half an hour of attempts, so I'll just walk you through the final one. I jumped over snow at the start and then avoided Mr. Oshiro. Then I went inside the building and avoided him once again. Next I got to these wooden platforms where things started to ramp up. I had to jump on a sliver of a platform that didn't have snow and then dodge pile after pile of snow, sometimes being mere pixels away from it. I landed a sick jump off of Mr. Oshiro's head to get to the final platform and finish the chapter. Next up was Golden Ridge, and we're back into some grassy fields. There were some precise jumps and landing on walls that I needed to complete, but eventually I made it to Granny. After talking to her is my least favorite part of the game, wind. For this section specifically, I had to climb to the very edge of this platform and then jump to the very edge of this platform to avoid all of the junk in the middle. Even though there was quite a bit of wind, a lot of these levels focus on platform between clouds and these moving boxes, so a lot of the time I wasn't even on the ground. But when it happened, it was awful. In this room, I first had to land on a pretty big strip of land, but with high wind, it became a much more precise jump. I then had to use a cloud to land in the middle of these two pieces of grass and then jump, dash, and climb to victory. During this level, you activate a moving block and then have to go ahead to clear obstacles and make sure the block won't break until the end. But to clear out the obstacles, you have to run on land, which is covered in grass. But I found out that a dash is actually the perfect distance to clear the grass, and I beat the room. Then I found myself in the snowball section, where snowballs spawn from the right side of the screen and come to kill you. There's also grass you have to avoid and ridiculously strong wind. I pushed through it and made it to the cutscene trigger just in time to see Theo shatter every single bone in his body and then brush it off like nothing happened. Level 5 literally has no grass. It's impossible to fail the challenge here. Partway through the level you see grass that's growing into the platform, but it's not poking out and doesn't matter. But level 6 makes up for the lack of grass here and is the worst level by far. It starts with us sitting at a campfire by Theo, but we have a panic attack, and this time, Madeline wins. She breaks the ground and we fall all the way down the mountain, which means way too much grass is everywhere. Since you can't really die in some of these areas, if I ever touched grass, I would just go back to where I was and try again. Thankfully, many of the rooms had these yellow leaves that would allow you to fly for a limited amount of time, and these blue guys that you can dash into and cause them to go in a certain direction. I looked it up because I didn't know what these are actually called, and apparently they're called Kevin. And look, I'm not making fun of anyone named Kevin, but why? The problem usually lay in getting past the beginning of the level and to the leaf for Kevin, or at the end trying to squeeze onto a tiny platform and not touch any grass. There was this one level where in the beginning you had to activate a Kevin to get him out of his cage and then bring him upwards, but there's grass in the middle. After getting crushed several times, I managed to have him carry me over the grass and then dashed up to save myself. The way they place grass in this level is interesting. They love to mix it in with these blue bricks to create an aesthetic design, and this often made it so there weren't required grassy platforms to jump on, and I could usually just jump over the grass. They would also often place grass in the out of bounds areas that I never noticed before, and actually looks a little bit weird now that I think about it. The finale to level 6 is a boss battle with Madeline. An annoying part of this battle is that while there are both grassy parts and blue parts, when you hit Madeline, she drops stones just on the blue parts and not the grassy parts. So while she's shooting lasers and death balls at me, I have to parkour on top of the falling bricks and not get crushed. As you get farther and farther into the boss fight, you have to hit Madeline more and more times, giving you more and more chances to mess up while she shoots more and more lasers and death balls at you. You use the golden feathers and green crystals as the levels get more complicated until Madeline gets tired. I had to do some crazy water parkour around a ridiculous amount of grass, and then hit her again and again as music grows louder and louder until I was left in silence. There were a few more jumps around the grass until I could finally jump into the cutscene, team up with my inner demon, and start climbing up this mountain again. We've leveled up and now only have one more level, the summit. The summit is a great finale to a great game that has little sections reflecting each of the different areas we visited. We do start in level 6 scenery, so it's the lowest point on the mountain, and although there were some tight jumps onto wooden platforms here and there, it was nowhere near as bad as the actual thing. There were a couple of tricky areas like this annoying piece of snow at the end of level 3 scenery and some pieces of grass in level 4, but really, a lot of the difficulty just came from the challenge of the actual level. As you get to the final checkpoints, there's a section with rain that weighs you down and wind that raises you up. They changed the gravity and wind so many times, and I love it. As I reached the top, the music started to quiet down. There were some massive piles of snow that I had to maneuver around before I jumped into the ending cutscene. This truly is a beautiful game with masterful storytelling, music, and character design. So, if you haven't played it, what are you waiting for? If you'd like to see more challenge runs and other content from me in the future, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. And if you have any challenge ideas for me, be sure to comment them below and I might just give it a shot. Thanks for watching and have a great day.